You're listening to Ernestly Speaking, the only weekly podcast that covers friends, foes, and anything that goes. And now, for your badass host, Ernest Owens. And we're back for another episode of Ernestly Speaking with your host, Ernest Owens, myself. Well, we are finally at May. It is May. Oh my goodness, the 5th month of the year. I would say time is going by fast, but then there's times where it goes by slow. And so I just don't know. But it has been already a month full of just surprises and thrills and nail biters. And you just always think you can predict how things are going to play out. And then you're always reminded, you win some, you lose some, right? And so there's been so many surprises already that has happened in the past week that I'm sitting here like, wow, Mother's Day is going to be next weekend. My 10-year reunion as a graduate of the University of Pennsylvania is literally going to be a week from after that. And then next thing you know, we're going to get ready for Memorial Day weekend. And this is going. So, I'm just taking everything step by step. But nonetheless, it has been quite a week already, and so many great things have already taken place. For starters, I'm happy that around this time when you're listening to this podcast, some of you all a little bit earlier, I'm entering my May with no classes to teach. This month, my last class was in April, so I have to get up in the morning and have to go all down to Cheney and teach. I get to enjoy what begins my summer sabbatical of sorts. And I get to really enjoy, my teaching vacation, which I'm super excited about. And so as you are listening, I most likely will be asleep. If you are listening at 8 in the morning or 7 a.m. or whatever, I am not getting up. There is no alarm clock to wake me up. I will be enjoying, this beautiful time I have. So I'm already relieved at the thought, because normally on Sundays or when I'm recording the podcast, I'm always thinking about, oh my goodness, my schedule, my curriculum, my sign-in sheets. I don't have to worry about that. And this upcoming weekend, Cheney's going to be having their graduation commencement, because it's the time for graduations. Oh my goodness, this time next year, my brother will be graduating from Temple, and he's going to be a senior in the fall. Like, I am not even understanding where did the time go, because I think you all have been listening to this podcast as long as my brother has been in the entire undergraduate process at Temple. So it's almost like we're graduating with him in a certain degree. But time goes by so fast. We have so much fun. But yeah, this is so much hitting me now, because it's May, all these graduations, all that's going on in the world, all these campus protests. We'll get to that, but it's a lot. So this past week, I've had a great time celebrating. Cinco de Mayo was on Sunday. Went to La Chinesca, which is this interesting spot that's on Spring Garden. I went with Dr. Parks and her fiance Joe, and of course Mr. Johnson, and we had a lovely dinner. For not St. Patrick's Day, for Cinco de Mayo. I guess it's all these made up holidays, but it was a great time. Smoky mezcal margaritas. I had this other great daiquiri that was really, really good. A really great rum daiquiri that they made. Bio buns, duck tacos, wonton chips with salsa, General Tso's wings. It was an interesting fusion of Chinese and Mexican cuisine that started its roots, I believe, in California, where this concept came from. And it's in Spring Garden. It's a really nice spot. It was a little rainy this weekend, which is interesting. Like, it's always rain during the weekends, but in the week the sun want to come out and get super bright. So even though it did have a little bit of rain, it did not stop, my weekend experience nonetheless. But it was a really great time catching up and just talking about politics in the world. Also, Mr. Johnson and I did date night Friday night. We had a cute time at Sin, which is Steak Italian Life and Northern Liberties. And I want to mention this because I have to say, some places surprise you, but I got to have a moment. I'm feeling this Sin restaurant in Northern Liberties. I like it. I really do. I've went when it first opened in the fall. I did brunch with the Lip Brothers there a couple of weeks back. But I went to dinner with Mr. Johnson. It was a cute date night dinner, and we had a blast. That was his first time going for dinner, and I think that was his first time going. Period. Actually, because the first time I went was I did like a little tasting, like a media preview tasting with my bestie Josh of Josh Eats Philly. And then I went for brunch with the Lip Brothers all in total. And each time I've went, I've always had a good time, but I just really like the vibe. So if you have not been, I do highly recommend it. It's a very fun, no frills, no fuss restaurant in Northern Liberties. It's got an Italian themed menu, but really new American classics, standard menu items. Food is really good. It's really well prepared. There's a wonderful young black queer chef that's in there doing his thing. Um, and he can cook his ass off. His name is Kyle, and he's a really good chef. He's a new executive chef that's there. And they just make out just really great food, just standard, just really just good, and it's something for everybody. They have a really wide menu. Seafood, pasta, steak, chicken, fish, everything. It's just a very just chill spot. And sometimes when you go to certain restaurants, it can be super, super over the top. And I love a really wild, over the top restaurant. But sometimes you just want to go somewhere where the vibe is chill, the food is reasonably priced, the energy is great, it's luxurious, but not too fancy, just a nice chill. And the music is great. It has a very club, loungy vibe, but a really nice, modern, chic, elegant, like spot decor wise. It's real moody, grown, sexy, very noir. Somewhere you would want to go on a date night or hang out with the girls. It was a nice, grown and sexy feel. Definitely grown millennial energy vibes. I didn't see any like Gen Zers in there. Didn't see I didn't see any boomers in there. Maybe a couple of younger Gen Xers, but definitely grown, swagged out millennials, diverse, good music. The music, they have a DJ there that plays music. Most of the music, which was interesting, which I enjoyed personally, was so nostalgic. It was like hip hop and R&B from the early 2000s. So like 2000 and 2010, that was the music that was playing. So you had that good Mariah, you had the T-Pain hits, you had, Neo and Usher. It was just a good playlist. It was just a really good vibe. Like I really enjoyed it. It was like the perfect like Friday night feels that I wanted that night. And so yeah, I really do like Sen. I really do. It's in Northern Liberties. It's definitely a vibe for a lot of you all who are always trying to find new places to go out to eat, places that's cute, that's fun, that's something different. I recommend Sen Philadelphia. Check them out. There's also Sushi Babu that the Lib Brothers and I went to. This was Saturday night. I've been every night this weekend. Friday night was Sin. Sunday was La Chinesca. And then, of course, Saturday night we was at Sushi Babu. Now, a lot of you all saw the article that I did, the exclusive I did on this place. For those who are keeping score and keeping tally, well, what's going over there in this Fishtown location. So it's a lot of changes. And I want to keep up for all of my food enthusiasts in the city who follow food news, who follow food changes, drama, all of that. I don't know. I'm trying to figure out how I can explain this story and explain where I was at because some of you all caught it. You were like, wait a minute, that address sounds familiar. And I feel like there was something else here and you did that and you all keep up with me. So I really rock with it. So let me explain this situation. Okay. So in Fishtown, there is a place called Izakaya Fishtown. That's what the location is. It's called Izakaya Fishtown. Inside of Izakaya Fishtown is a back room that's like VIP exclusive. And in there is a place called Sushi by Bo. Now, inside Sushi by Bo, it's super dope. It's a omakase situation in there, like a private sushi dinner setting, right? Okay. Now let's go back, because you're like, wait a minute, this sounds like something else. Yes, this location was once called Izakaya by Yanga. Okay? So Izakaya by Yanga used to be this place because there was a sushi whisperer, Kevin Yanga, who used to be there. Now, if you remember the name Kevin Yanga used to be like the big sushi chef at Pod back in the day. That's the Steven Star Restaurant in University City that is still open and still popping. It used to be K-Pod, now it's back to Pod. But apparently Kevin Yanga was supposed to go back there and do his thing. Seems like Kevin Yanga finds himself in some drama because he's not there. He's about to open he opened a brand new restaurant that he's doing that is another, sushi concept that he's experimenting. He's doing his own little thing. He's got this new place. It's another Kevin Yanga, special. And people are like wondering, well, what is this place about? So I do want to put some context here for this place that he has now, because it was listed on the hottest new restaurants. So this place is called Yanga Kapo Izakaya. That place is on 637 North 3rd Street. Now that's where Kevin Yanga is now. But before all that, Kevin Yanga was at Pod many years ago, left Pod, came through, created a spot in Fishtown called Izakaya by Yanga, and had a omakase backdoor room inside of this restaurant. He had a private room that he used to do some really great top-tier sushi. Well, there was a falling out. There was a lot going on. Kevin Yanga pulled his name out the deal, and the place got renamed. Okay, the place got renamed Izakaya Fishtown. So they kept the same place, but the back room needed to do something different. So in the fall of last year, there was a place called Sushi Suite. Sushi Suite was in there. Now, Sushi Suite was a collaboration with a place, as you all know, Glue Hospitality collaborated, and they collaborated with this national tag team group called Simple View. So they put Sushi Suite in there in the fall. Now, Sushi Suite was that upscale, omakase situation with all this money. It was like $300 something to have the most exquisite, divine sushi you can imagine, right? So I did a big old story about it when it first opened for Eater Philly, of course, because I'm the proud editor. Y'all see the business cards now. But I did an exclusive there about that place. Well, that place came and it went, okay? So now there is Simple Venue and Glue Hospitality is bringing another concept, and this is called Sushi Babu. Now, if you've heard of Sushi Babu, this is because they have locations all across the country. They have locations in Chicago, in Fort Lauderdale, in New York, multiple locations in New York. They're all over the country. But the first concept, this debut, is coming to Philadelphia. It's in Philadelphia. Doors open to the public at large on May 10th. So this upcoming Friday, you can go and make reservations. You can make reservations now. I believe reservations are open right now on Open Table. Now, let me explain. Sushi Suite was exquisite. I mean, $300 something per person, $2 something plus. Top tier sushi, all of this fancy stuff. It was wild. Sushi Babu is a little different. They changed the back room. It's an omakase speakeasy energy. It's hip hop themed. It's, a beautiful spray paint graffiti theme. Very Philly hip hop, homage to the 90s hip hop era. Very nice spot. Very schwanky. You can go on Eater Philly site. Check out the story. Go to my IG, check out the pictures, but it's really cool, very upscale, very fun. But the difference about this is that they're doing it very different. So this is more affordable and timely. You get it for 60 minutes for an hour. You can try this omakase situation. It will only cost customers $60. Okay. Now, if you went to other omakase spots, you could be paying upwards of $150 for this experience. But here, it's only $60. You get 12 pieces of some really great omakase. This is really great, high quality sushi. The portions are ridiculous, very good, very worth the bang for its buck. And if you want the what they call the bougie upgrade, you can spend $125 for a 17-course omakase during the same experience. So you can do 12 pieces for $60, or you can upgrade to $125 for a 17-course experience, and that is called the bougie upgrade. The Lip Brothers and I got together Saturday night. We did the bougie upgrade to try the 17-course omakase, and I will tell you all that if you're questioning whether or not this experience is worth it, I highly recommend it. It is an incredible experience. It was fun. The music was popping. It was fast paced. They have specialty cocktails inside that particular omakase's room. It's intimate. It's only like about 8 to 12 seats in there. It's not that many seats. It's very intimate. You're getting an up close look at these world-renowned sushi chefs do their thing. It's very personal. It's very intimate. They're serving the sushi right when they're making it. It is just such a very dope experience. And I think everyone should go out and have an experience like this because it is something very different. My bestie Jamarcus, never been to omakase before. Josh and I have been a couple of times, and so has Gio, but Jamarcus has never been to one, and he was wildly impressed. I took my brother to one a couple of months ago for the first time, and he just loved it. I feel like it's the perfect birthday gift. It's the perfect bestie hangout. It's a great date night situation if you're looking to do something different. And I'm impressed with the fact that they turned this place around so quickly and made it something more affordable, more hip, and just more chill. I loved Sushi Suite when it was here. But it was definitely something that was very like upscale, very, very upscale. And I didn't know if Philadelphia was ready for something like that. I mean, there are some places around like that do that kind of level of upscale. Hiroki is one that is really like, oh, Hiroki is like one of those, it's one of those experiences. Royal Sushi Izakaya is one of the top tier ones in Philly that do sushi at that kind of magnitude. But Sushi by a Bowl is a fun, dope experience. I highly recommend it. And it's definitely something that people are going to be talking about. So nothing but love for them. Outside of that, Lip Brothers was out early this week. There was a Kentucky Derby vibes. We were at Stratus Lounge again. I'm starting to love, Stratus Lounge is just, you just can't go wrong there. We were with Woodford Reserve, who sponsored this incredible Kentucky Derby whiskey tasting. And it was so fun, so swank. We wore our great Derby outfits with our hats and our looks. And Gio and I had our matching Telfars or Telfees, as the kids say. We had the clear ones. I had the clear lavender one, and he had the clear brown one. And we was modeling the bags and doing a little turn, as you all saw on the IG. A great time, great drinks, mint juleps and galore. It was a good time. And we're definitely in that season. Like, I'm really feeling like this is peak spring energy, peak spring realness, all of that good jazz, all those good vibes. It was super fun. And outside of that, I made a podcast appearance on this incredible show. There's a young woman who's actually one of the youngest chief of staffs in Philadelphia City Council. Her name is Dom, and she has this, Dom Miller is her name, and she has this really fun podcast that she do that's really, which is really super dope. But she has this podcast that she's kind of, I think it's fairly new, but she has this podcast that she do called it's called Unabridged or Unbridged, I believe it is, like either Unabridged or Unbridged. And it's really just about how you can be your true, unauthentic self. And I did the podcast. It's, unabridged. It's our whole unedited self is the focus. And it was great talking to her. It was a great interview, very fun, very lively, talking about my career and what motivates me, inspire me. It was a very motivational episode. It was we talked about my career, but it was in the mindset of like how did I achieve things? What's my mindset? What kind of advice I give people. It came from that type of place. So if you're into really good uplifting thoughtful podcast, listen to that. If you're not interested to podcasts like that per se on the usual, then listen to Ernestly Speaking. We're not really inspirational like that over here. And I'm joking. We're insightful, informative, but we get to the tea. But Dob Miller's, she is the chief of staff for council member at large, Isaiah Thomas. So, it was fun to talk about a little bit of politics and things, but it was a great episode. It's coming out I believe in the beginning of June, just in time for Pride Month. And yeah, it should be really great. So I highly recommend people listen to it. And then lastly, before I get into what's going on in the world and these hot topics, I have some great cool news. WRD Radio, okay, that's 96.1 FM, 900 AM, progressive Black Talk Media, is going to launch a new show later this month. It's kicking off on May 19th. That is going to be about food and about cooking. And it's a show, it's a food show, but it's about Black eating and dining. And this is a really fun show that I was, when I was invited to be a part of it. I don't even know if I can even reveal it, but but I'm telling you on this podcast, so you know. But if you're here in the streets, you didn't hear from me. But there's this, it's a really great show that is about the food scene, but navigating black food scene, eating culture, and how it shapes us as Black and brown people. But it's a great show that I've been really that is a brain project that's been an interest of the incredible Tiffany Bacon, who's a producer at WRD, and she does a lot of programming and everything. But she's always wanted to do this show for a period of time. The show is called Breaking Bread. And it is the first episode, was the pilot episode. We filmed it at Booker's, and I was in conversation with one of the owners, Sherry Syfax, and I was talking with Tiffany Bacon at Booker's in West Philly, or as I love to call it, Best Philly. And we did that episode. We filmed the pilot. So this is going to be a show that is, I'm not on every episode. I just made a guest appearance. This is Tiffany Bacon's show. But I was the inaugural first, special guest on the show alongside with Sherry Syfax, who is the co-owner with her husband, Tracy, of Booker's in West Philly. So we were, all three of us were in a conversation. It was filmed and it was recorded. So so the way they're gonna do it, they're gonna run the footage and the film on their social media channels. I think you could be able to watch it on YouTube and on Facebook, I believe. And then they're gonna run the episode on their streaming platforms, and they're gonna run it on air on the radio. But it's gonna make its grand premiere on the 19th. So that should actually be Sunday at noon. They're going to run this show. So it's going to be a really fun, lively show. It's going to be weekly. Basically, Tiffany Bacon is going to be making appearances at various restaurants. I think she's shooting for Black-owned restaurants primarily throughout Philly and talking about entrees in these businesses, but also, having great conversations. So this first episode, I'm not going to tell too much about it. It's an hour-long episode. We're talking about brunch and what it means to the Black community, what it means to us, and our stories about food, while also trying some great brunch entrees at Booker's. And so it was fun because we really had mimosas. We had it with Moet. We had a good old time. And you can hear it and see it starting on May 19th. So it's going to be a really fun episode. I was so happy I was called on to be a part of it. I mean, as the editor of Eater Philly, why not start an episode with a great food editor and a great Black-owned business in West Philly? So it's going to be a really fun show. I can't wait for y'all to listen to it, hear what I have to say about some things. And we tried several cool entrees. We had like 3 courses um, at Booker's while we were discussing all the rich details and memories and everything like that. So it was exciting. I'm just thinking about it right now. Ooh, that fried chicken was good. And you can tell when you have some good fried chicken, you don't need hot sauce. You know, I love some Louisiana hot sauce. I mean, even if you don't need it, I'm still gonna have it with it because that's just how good I love. I love chicken with some good Louisiana hot sauce. But nonetheless, let's get into these hot topics. So for starters, Trump. I know everybody's mad at Biden for various reasons. You know, everybody hates Chris, everybody hates Biden, okay? Get it. But if you have not read this Trump interview, not that you need, I mean, okay, black folks listen to this podcast, which is a lot of black listeners. Maybe you don't even need, maybe you don't even need to hear this. But there's a lot going on, right? So Trump did an interview um for Time magazine. He's on the front cover of Time, the latest issue. And there's a lot of people debating and having concerns, but it was a bombardment of dishonesty. He lies a lot in this interview, but it's also a scary ass interview, to be very clear. And a lot of people have had a lot of debate about the Trump interview. You know, people basically said that it's obvious that Trump has cruel intentions. He makes it very clear. You know, I'm going to quote him. He says, when asked about his dictatorial aspirations, he said in an interview, I think a lot of people like it. Like, he's not holding back on the fact that when he comes back, he getting his lick, right? He's talking a lot about, the consequences of Roe v. Wade, about his thoughts about it. There's a lot of things people should consider in this interview, but there's a lot of things he lied about. Apparently, there was a lot of lies. CNN reported on it. We're talking about terrorism during the Trump presidency. Trump claimed during his presidency, he said there was very little terrorism. He said we had none. We had 4 years of no terrorism. We didn't have a World Trade Center knocked down. Now, that's true, right? But, I mean, there was a mass murder that the Justice Department claimed they had in 2017, where there was allegedly, in 2017, there was this mass murder which killed 8 people, injured others, which was a terrorist attack that was carried out in ISIS. There was a lot of domestic terrorism. We forget that there was, even though there was not a lot of quote unquote foreign terrorism, there was actual domestic terrorism. And, even when there was other things, right? Trump claimed that, he completed what he said he was going to do, which much more than I said I was going to do regarding the wall. Trump didn't do much regarding the wall. Talking about he's going to build the wall, 1,000 miles. He didn't do that. I mean, at the end of the day, they said he did maybe, 52 new miles of the wall, even though the wall was 458 miles total. 52 miles is what he did. He didn't do 1,000 miles. He'd been claiming that. He's lied about military pressure on South Korea. He lied about, his popularity in Israel, claiming that he has a 98% approval rating in Israel. And apparently they said that a poll found that in 2018 had said that only 59% of Jewish Israelis had a favorable view of Trump. They found a late poll in the 2020 presidential election found that 70% of Jewish Israelis thought a Trump victory be best for Israel's interests. Then there was a poll released in March of this year that found that 44% of Israeli adults wanted Trump elected in 2024, and 30% wanted Biden, and 26% were unsure. This is 26%. Just a lot of lies. But CNN reports in depth that they found 32 lies that they felt like they had to fact check in real time around everything from the January 6th attacks to domestic issues to his legal cases. It's a lot going on. And this is regarding the Time interview. 32 lies they found, major lies. The Times reporter is named Eric Cortesla, or Cortesla, I believe it is. He said regarding the New York trial recently, right? Biden and Trump's New York trial. He said, I just want to say for the record, there's no evidence that President Biden directed this prosecution against you. This is what the Time reporter said to him. Trump responded, oh, sure there is, and told the reporter that his assertion was so wrong. But it's true. Okay, the Time reporter Eric Cortelsla is telling the truth. There is no evidence that Biden has any role in trying to get or in coerce or do any of that with Manhattan DA Alvin Bragg's prosecution over Trump's alleged falsification of business records. And this is regards to Stormy Daniels. This is the case that is the one that we are focused on because everything else right now has not been happening. And I think we spend a lot of time sometimes trying to, figure out which case matters. As of right now, the Stormy Daniels trial is the only one we're going to get a verdict before the November 5th election. Everything else is up in the air. Trump is still acting funny about the 2020 election, the legitimacy of it. He has repeatedly said that he had proof that the election was quote unquote stolen, hence the whole stop the steal narrative, claiming that he used COVID, that opponents had used COVID to cheat and lots of other things to cheat. Now, this is just not true, but Trump gonna lie. And he said a lot of things in that interview that should worry people. While everybody's all up here talking about what's going on, that interview with Trump, that Trump interview on Time was really, really ridiculous. I mean, there are people out here with tons of transcripts and they're fact checking everything. There's some big poll that came out already last year that posed the idea of Trump pardoning most of the January 6th rioters, which he said he would do. Trump plans to arguably pardon those January 6th insurrectionists, those domestic terrorists. The extremism is real. And people are begging the question, is RFK Jr. a Trump spoiler? Because the narrative has shifted. People thought that Robert F. Kennedy Jr. was going to be the one that was going to take votes away from Biden. But it appears that he might be actually taking votes away from Trump. That some Trump supporters might think that Trump is not going to be strong enough or to do what needs to be done to win the election. So is giving their votes to Robert F. Kennedy a more moderate choice or a choice that they can back behind and get behind. So there's a lot of mixed impressions behind what's driving some of these decisions. And it's very telling. It's very telling. When I see stuff like that, I'm just like, I say stuff that makes you go, but I don't know, right? I see some of the logic there. I see some of the concerns there. But long story short, every time I hear these conversations about, about Biden and the comparison between Biden and Trump, I do take a moment to say, I mean, listen, it's easy to criticize and critique. Biden definitely needs to step his game up. But I'm also somebody who is looking at this and saying, okay, there's some things that we need to consider. But Trump, I'm sorry. It's just no way. It's just no way. I don't know how anybody can act like there is these are the same people. You could be upset about certain things that that Biden is doing, and that's fair. I'm not, a cheerleader for either of these candidates, but I'm at a point where I just feel like trying to have this pessimistic attitude of I'm not voting for neither candidate, such a fortunate thing, right? Such a fortunate thing. When I hear people make those complaints, yes, it's easy to come at this with that mindset, to say that, oh, both of these people are bad, they're both horrible, we're going to get the same results, what's the difference? I know what the difference is, and when I hear people say it, I always say to them, if you're going to be in this country and you're going to vote and you're going to be a participant, to try to, act like there's no difference. And and I think intellectually dishonest. Um, because for me, you have one candidate in this situation. Look, if we wanted a different candidate, if Democrats were serious about getting someone other than Biden, there should have been enough outrage to put another person up there. But that's not the case. There wasn't enough outrage to get an alternative. We have Biden. And so when I hear people say this stuff, I told this person there was a person that I had an interesting conversation with, and I told them that I was going to play this when I heard this, and I was going to honor what I said to them. I'm not going to name them, but I told them that if I heard them with all this attitude and all this talk about Biden and Trump being the same, I said, look at your freedoms and look at your liberties. And I'm going to play this. I'm going to play this part because I told them I was going to play it if I heard them talking this. So here it goes.
And I'm proud to be an American, where at least I know I'm free. But I won't forget the men who died, who gave that right to me. And I gladly stand up next to you and defend her still today. 'Cause there ain't no doubt I love this land. God bless the USA.
Listen, let me tell you something. Sometimes we can get so caught up that we talk, there's a lot of American hypocrisy. A lot of people that want to complain about who's not doing what and whatever. But when you really look out and you see how this country, if you live in other countries and other places and you really, really live there, and deal with some of the issues around democracy. Listen, America's not a perfect democracy. I'm not saying it is. Clearly, I can't say that. But I will say that to a certain extent, when I hear certain people in ivory towers and nice buildings and nice luxurious spaces complaining about, oh, this isn't good enough, whatever, you're right? Things can improve. But don't you compare a dictator to a Democrat, okay? Yes, there are some problems. But there's one side on this situation I feel like can be pressured to change a position. The other person is not. And so while we can be frustrated about certain positions and policies, on November 5th, if you act like both of these options are non and void, I don't know what to tell you. I think some people just get so psyched out, so panicking. But they say all this while sitting somewhere, drinking a frappuccino, living in a room and shelter where they don't got no worries about any types of, bombs happening where they're living, not worried about anything, catastrophic happening on that level. But the people who have the most to say are not the people that's going to get themselves some combat boots and go out there and fight and defend this country. And listen, I'm not saying everyone needs to or should, but I'm just saying that there's a lot of the things that you have and that you're able to complain about comes from it. How do you think America become a safe, quote unquote, country? Safe, relatively in some ways. You think that just came from just people just being nice? It's just a lot of hypocrisy about how this stuff comes to be. Because a lot of people don't want to live the way they think they do, trying to argue the things they want to argue with their iPhones and their ability to order tickets. How do you think you get all these goddamn cell phones that you all reuse, or have to have your MacBook and your fucking Stanley cup and shit? How do you think you get all that? How do you think you get it? And so when I hear people get to that point where they get too crunk about it and not know, you get a chance to vote and get two options. And as long as we can have those abilities to do that, I don't want to hear too much. It's so easy to be just out here, oh, I don't like this democracy. Okay. It's easy to say it. Which I'm going to just give another replay just for this person to hear it again. So they won't even say this to me again.
And I'm proud to be an American, where at least I know I'm free. But I won't forget the men who died, who gave that right to me. And I gladly stand up next to you and defend her still today. 'Cause there ain't no doubt I love this land.
Exactly. So I tell people all the time that, you know, just think about it. Um, just think about it. Think about how we were and what we when we think when we keep telling people certain things. Um, because sometimes people will get caught up in these conversations, and I just want people to think about, the fights they choose, and in the way that they move, because it's so easy to be critical of these things, and even just the fact that there is an option. So, as I always say on my podcast episode, if you think that things are hopeless, remember we literally have, y'all, 6 months. We're November 5th. We're technically, what, 6 months away from the election. We got work cut out for us. Don't be mad. Vote. And do other things. Other things. So that we don't keep finding ourselves in this cycle every 4 years. Just saying. So, Trump is trumping right now. But I want to talk about this thing with cannabis. Biden is proposing rescheduling a move, okay, which is a plan. Okay, Biden's cannabis. I like to say cannabis, but people say marijuana. But there's a plan of rescheduling move will add support to the Pennsylvania legislation's effort. This is what the governor's office said. So the plan for Biden administration's plan is to move federally reschedule marijuana, okay, will add support to an effort to legalize cannabis in Pennsylvania, which is what Governor Shapiro is saying. So while moving marijuana from Schedule 1 to Schedule 3 under the Federal Controlled Substance Act would not legalize it, okay? It would not legalize it, but says the move could bolster state-level reform efforts. So this is what we've heard from the spokesperson for Shapiro's office. Governor Shapiro has made clear that we need to catch up practically every one of our neighbors. Now, let me be clear who our neighbors are. We're talking about Jersey right by us. You got Delaware. You got everybody near us, right? Has legalized marijuana and is benefiting from hundreds of millions of dollars in economic activity and revenue. And this important step by the federal government only adds support to the governor's proposal. Okay? So Shapiro is once again proposing legalization as part of his budget request. Now, to be clear, this rescheduling marijuana under the CSA, which is the Controlled Substances Act, will not federally legalize it. But many advocates and people are saying that the modest reform will act as a catalyst for both congressional and state level legislation. So basically, it will help start the ground. And, a lot of people are doing something. State Rep Almond Brown, who we're going to talk about later on this podcast, he has filed a marijuana legalization bill that he has described as grounded in safety and social equity. He's doing a lot of work to try to work on this. I mean, it's interesting to see if that legislation passes, but it's a progressive first step. And, people are asking questions like, well, why is the Biden administration planning to reclassify it? The argument is that the war on drugs has moved, the war on drugs moved in one punitive direction, and he wants to fix this pretty much. So this is part of the plan. He did his first move in 2022. So, he did one of the most sweeping pardons in modern American history. This is what Biden did. See, I'm going to say this, and it's going to make people gag a little bit. But it's so sad that so much of the other things happening is making people ignore what Biden has done policy-wise. Would you gag if I told you that Biden has done probably more serious progressive legislation than any president in our modern American history? That if you actually look pound for pound the policies that Biden has done, he's gotten more done in this fight in one term than some of your faves have done. The problem is that he's currently operating in a space where you all want so much more that you don't even acknowledge the things he has done that has been on the table for a long time. So let's talk about Biden's legacy on cannabis, for example. He announced in 2022 one of the most sweeping pardons in modern American history. He took executive action to pardon thousands of people convicted of cannabis possession under federal law. Okay? And he bragged about it during the State of the Union address. And he's worked on new work. Now, here's the new thing that he's doing. This is the first time that federal officials have acknowledged potential medical benefits to cannabis, which has now opened the door to therapeutic research. This is the Drug Enforcement Administration Adjustments Department. Okay, he is slowly but surely working to normalize cannabis in a way that not only helps decriminalize it, but creates a recreational opportunity across the country. This is, listen, this is a big deal. Now, to be clear, the proposal is published in the Federal Register. There will be a 60-day public comment period. The proposal will then be reviewed by an administrative law judge. All of that, right? This is a breakthrough. But a lot of the work he's doing will help move cannabis businesses out of various places, which basically prohibits them from writing off any basic business expenses and making it difficult to turn a profit. Like, he's helping to normalize all this. A lot of people are not paying attention because there's so many other things going on. But these moves are big, and there's a political upside to it. And, it's a lot of people who have different thoughts about it, because they're saying the Biden administration is not implementing cannabis research reform law. They're saying, he's loosening restrictions on medical marijuana research, but argue that federal, agencies are refusing to comply potentially. But at the end of the day, he's moving things. He's moving the needle in this conversation. It's going to be interesting to see how it plays out. I'm staying tuned, and so should you. So, moving on with campus protests, there's stuff going on all over the country, as you know, as the Israeli war in Gaza continues and bloodshed continues. Biden has called for a ceasefire. I believe that we should have a ceasefire. Students on campus are making demands to call for the universities to divest in the Israeli government and to stop what they believe to be a genocide. There's a lot of issues, right, continuing. And the observations I'm making, I'm just going to keep it really frank. History teaches us that when there are student protests, when students get involved at this level of magnitude, maybe every type of action isn't the sexiest, isn't the best, that there will be bad actors who will do things on certain positions that will embarrass. And we can talk about the fact that, okay, some people say that they see pro-Palestinian protesters that are saying things that are anti-Semitic, or a couple of them are saying things that are, not necessarily favorable language, right? And that's fair for critique. But what we don't need to do, and this is what I hate that I see happen, is take the spirit and the merit out of what is largely happening on these campuses and try to make them something else. The majority of these campus students that are protesting on their college campuses, that is not only just demanding a ceasefire, but to really hold the Israeli government accountable for the bloodshed that is happening in Gaza, where several thousands upon thousands of innocent children and mothers are being killed and murdered. And every time there's this conversation, people say, well, what about the hostages? Well, absolutely. Nobody wants the hostages, right, to be held in hostage, right, in bondage. The hostages should be released immediately. And these are not two separate issues. And so to those people who always argue, well, what about the hostages? Or say that argument. Well, first of all, let me be very clear. When people are saying release the hostages, a lot of those individuals who are leading with release the hostages first are actually saying peace in Palestine individuals, Palestinians who are being, wrongfully murdered or killed and being impacted by the Israeli government's, aggressive violence, right? No one's praying for peace for them in the same sentence, but it seems like when people are specifically talking about this massive ongoing killing of innocent, people in Gaza, mothers and children, then there's always this deflect of, oh, well, what about the hostages, or say the hostages? And it's almost like there's this nasty retort. It's almost like it's disingenuous that you're asking this. Can you not acknowledge both? Can you not actually not use it as a dingle, as if there's some conspiracy? There's a lot of Islamophobia in that rhetoric, where there's almost this presumption that no one considers it. And I don't assume that when people are saying things about the hostages, right? I don't assume that these individuals do not want peace for the Palestinians. But I noticed that on social media, any conversations where the student protesters are speaking out, there's this automatic sense of saying, what about the hostages? I don't think that there is anyone that is not in concern about the hostages that are also being held, right? I think in reality, they want all this to be over. And I don't think anyone is dismissing it. I think that the United States government, in many ways, have prioritized the hostages. Some would argue more so over that of these consistent innocent families that's being killed in Gaza. So this conversation about the hostages, I think elected officials across the country in the U.S. Senate and Congress have spent more of their energy focused on the hostages than they do speaking about Palestine, because it almost seems like if anyone calls for peace for Palestinians, that there is this presumption that they could easily be canceled. I wrote about this in my book, The Case for Council Culture, that not all cancellations are equal. I talk about this heavily in one of my chapters, and I encourage people to continue to read that book, because so much of what I've discussed in that book parallels with these conversations we're seeing right now with campus activism. And it's just been a lot of really mean-spiritedness that is now we're seeing. We're seeing white supremacy. We're seeing Black pro-Palestinian protesters practice their First Amendment rights. But now we're seeing people in universities like University of Mississippi, where a group of white boys, right, that are not Jewish, they're white Anglo-Saxon white boys in the South that are college students, that are making on camera, making ape sounds and chants at taunting a plus-size Black girl who is rightfully so protesting, right, practicing her free speech. And interesting enough, they're out here telling, doing ape chants and being racist. I don't think for 5 seconds those student right protesters are Jewish, nor are they defending Israel or defending anything, but they're using these opportunities to now harass and taunt. So this has become a racist matter, where you're starting to see people in the name of Israel, or to use and take advantage of criticizing pro-Palestinian protesters, where now it has become aligned with racism, where we're seeing an opposition. And we're seeing a lot of conflation. And now the conflation is going on both sides, right? Because now the conflation of seeing people that are against pro-Palestinian protesters, now we're seeing anyone who's in opposition to that be called colonizers, white supremacists, and dealing with it, going in that rhetoric. But then you're hearing people who are going into Islamophobia, that pro-Palestinian protesters that are defending for a ceasefire, demanding Biden to step up in their student government, they're now being called anti-Semitic. They're now being called pro-Hamas. They're now being called a lot of things. But what's interesting is that a lot of the students on these Ivy League campuses that are participating in these demonstrations, in these protests, a lot of them are actually, interesting enough, a lot of them are Jewish students. And they're not in agreement with the Israeli government, because for a lot of them, their decision on aligning themselves and calling for a ceasefire and calling for peace in the Middle East is that it doesn't have anything to do with their religious belief. What it has to do is with a government state power that's doing something that just seems to be an act of genocide to so many people. So many people believe that's an act of genocide. A lot of people believe that this is a deliberate attempt from Israel to wipe the Palestinians off the map, that this active, aggressive, reckless bombings consistently, that is consistently killing innocent people, killing artifacts and culture and medical centers and schools, that all of this excessive war that does not equivocate to what happened in Israel on October 7th. Yes, there was a terrorist attack. Yes, it was irreprehensible. And I am not speaking on behalf of Hamas, but I think it's condemned. It should be condemned. I condemn it. The fuck? I don't stand by it. And to ask anyone, do you condemn a regular person? Who the fuck does not condemn it? If you don't condemn what happened on October 7th of 2023, then you are not in, you are on some other shit and you shouldn't even be in this conversation. But several things can be true. And I don't know what the fuck happened in nuance in this conversation, but several things can be true. Yes, you can condemn October 7th terrorist attacks. Yes, you can condemn what is happening to those innocent people being held hostage, right? Yes, you can demand for their release. Yes, you can defend and speak against anti-Semitism. And yes, you can demand a ceasefire. And yes, you can say that Palestinian people who are mothers and children and families that are trying to move from place to place, that the Israeli government has done them wrong. You can say all of those things. All of those things can be true. And the fact that people are being pigeon-toed into picking one position over other is just cruel and reckless. If you don't have compassion for the Israeli people who are being held hostage, those who were from those terrorist organizations from Hamas, if you don't have the compassion to speak out against Hamas, if you don't have the compassion to speak out against the Israeli government for abusing their position and American resources to do a war that should stop the way that it is, to stop this reckless bloodshed, this lack of strategy, and this disgusting abuse of power, if you cannot hold those magnitudes, then what kind of human are you? If you are someone that calls yourself pro-Palestinian and you have no compassion for the wrong that has happened to Israeli people who have been held hostage and been separated from their families, if you are somebody who do not have the compassion to recognize that the Israeli government has gone too fucking far and now they have consistently bombed Gaza, if you don't have that compassion, then you can't speak on humanitarian rights. You can't do any of it. So, if I haven't made it clear where I stand on it, that's where I stand. I'm disappointed. I'm disappointed. I go to the university. You know, my bachelor's came from Penn. My master's came from USC. Both of my alma maters are disappointing me in their response to this issue. I gotta say that, you know, a broken clock is right twice a day. But for the Philadelphia Police Department not to come to the campus and get in the middle of what took place was a smart move. They said, "Oh, we don't want to. We don't want to get involved in that." They did not come down to the University of Pennsylvania and get in the middle of the campus encampment protest. And I think that was a smart move by there, because if you look what's happening at Columbia University right now, it is total chaos. If you look what's happening on college campuses across the country, it is ridiculous. But the fact that Philadelphia, right, the city that I live in, that the police department, for all of its flaws and all of its errors, and let me be clear, they're still a messed up institution, child. But for them to say, "Nah, we're not coming down there, y'all ain't gonna put us in that," was a smart move. Because quite frankly, there is no chaos on Penn's campus when we're talking about violence. The student organizers and encampment, they're not fighting anyone. They're not setting anything on fire. They're not throwing hands. They're not doing anything that would warrant a strong police presence to harass and bother them. And to see people, after all that we've learned during the racial uprisings and what we learned during Black Lives Matter protests, that people would just want police there to do what? To do what? What do you want them to do? Right? That people are obsessed. And we're seeing the internal white supremacist nature of certain folks. Because why would you want police to be there? What is the reason? Why? Why would police need to be there to put hands on college students? Part of the privilege of these Ivy League schools to some extent is that these are kids who come from money. And so they're protected in a way that this would not have happened if this was not on a college campus. And could there be a conversation about class equity? And this is very different, because if they were not on a college campus, I do argue that this would be a different outlook. And to be clear, there are people who are not on a college campus right now at Penn that I think is misrepresenting the logic and the messaging of these students. And so I want students on either side of this issue to be very vigilant and smart about who they're around and who they're aligned with and who they're talking to. Because there is a lot of grifters out there who will capitalize off of the issues happening in these campus protests. But what I want to say is that historically, when student movements spoke up and out about issues, they were typically right. You look at the Vietnam War, you look at what recently happened with Black Lives Matter. I remember in 2013, when I was a student on Penn's campus, and we had student protests and gatherings and marches and things. And I remember back then, 11 years ago, people saying to me and saying to kids that was at Penn at the time, why y'all out there marching and protesting? What is this Black Lives Matter? What about all lives mattering? That's racist. That's divisive. I remember it. That was my generation. That was my college years. And I remember people asking those questions. They didn't get what we were doing. They were calling us divisive. They said, that's no way to talk about these issues. You got to do it this way. You got to do it that way. And then how many years later, 7 years later, George Floyd. And everybody started saying Black Lives Matter. And so is this the Vietnam of our time? Is this that moment, another moment in our time where right now, even South Africa, apartheid movement, you look in the late 80s, I talked about this in my book, you think about how college students were protesting against apartheid in South Africa, and that divestment argument was considered to be very controversial. And today, we look at Nelson Mandela and we see him as a hero. Is this that moment that maybe 10 years from now, maybe longer, we'll look back at the students asking for a free Palestine and changes, and we will look back and realize where we were in history at that time? History has shown us that college students, when they speak up and they speak out, they typically on the right side of history. The youth are the answer. Not everybody's perfect. Not every tactic is ideal, but you know what? The spirit of where they're arguing, what they're demanding, there's something there. And as somebody who remembers where I was at when I was on college campus speaking out, we were right then. These students are right now, just like they were. The boomers were and the Gen Xers or whatnot. Gen Xers with apartheid, boomers with Vietnam. Every generation has had their moment. This is Gen Z's moment. Millennials had Black Lives Matter. Gen Xers had apartheid. Boomers had Vietnam. Gen Z, Palestine might be the argument for them. But history has taught us that college students, that when they use their voice and they choose a movement, it's because they've been reading those books. They know their history. They're taking that time to reflect. And what side of history are you going to be on? Just saying. So an update to last week's hotly contested race. When I did this podcast last week, we were still biting our nails trying to figure out who won in West Philly in the 10th district. Was the race going to be a race between Almond Brown and Cass Green? Almond Brown was the close up. We wanted to know how that was going to fare out. Well, I am proud to announce that the winner of that race for state rep, Almond Brown was able to claim his seat. He held on to it in spite of everything going against him. He pulled out. He's declared victory. He won his race with about 42 votes, they said. 42 votes he won by. 42 votes is what it's giving. That says a lot. He's claimed victory. He says that, he's made progress. That 42 votes made a difference between the state house. And that's where we're at. It was a hotly contested race, but Almond Brown is the cat with 9 lives. He won once more. And here's the thing. I kept telling people, I said, do not sleep on these candidates. Do not sleep on this race. This race is crucial. This is one of those moments where I tell people every vote matters. Every vote matters. People sometimes, sleep on that and say, oh, I don't, oh, I'll sleep out. But for those people who slip out this race, I just want to remind you all that you might have been the person that a couple of y'all who didn't go, you could have been that person. It could have made a big difference. So, I tell people all the time, don't sleep on these elections. Every vote matters. Every vote matters. So it's been interesting to see how it's going to play out. But I mean, at the end of the day, almost doesn't count. It was a close race. He gets to get closer to his pension. I think he's getting close. I think it's 8 years. I believe they have to do in the state house something before they get a pension. But he's trying to get that pension. And if he stays in for another 10 years total, he'll get his student debt, kind of cleared and covered through their system. So, there's a lot of government job perks. People say, well, why do people get jobs in the government? Because one, they can be able to, expunge their student loans. They can be able to get pensions and state benefits for the rest of their life. Listen, I'm married to someone who works for the city government. There's incentives, but you got to end up marrying a rich husband or wife or somebody, a partner who is a spouse, right? Who's going to have the other bread on the end so everybody can scheme together, get on the benefits, do it. Let me be quiet. Listen, it works for some. So I want to talk about city council because that also had a different kerfuffle of things. So last week when we talked about this whole kerfuffle with the school board, it's been an ongoing saga that has had a conclusion this past week. But I want to explain it because I think a lot of people have probably been hearing things, trying to figure out what's going on with Joyce Wilkerson. So, as you all remember, last week there was drama. Well, the previous week, before, last episode, I was talking about how there was drama in city council when it came to appointing the slate. So, Mayor Sherelle Parker, had 9 people she wanted to go up for the school board consideration. City council has to, gets the vote to basically confirm the school board nominees or appointees under the mayor. Well, they only picked 8 out of the 9. And the person they did not pick was Joyce Wilkerson, which that's just who they did not want. Now, we thought that was a wrap, but at the 11th hour last week, they all agreed, right, that the city council announced that Wilkerson was going to be up for a hearing on last Monday. So that was a moment where we said, whoa, that might be good news, because that means that if Wilkerson's getting a hearing after she initially was not, because the mayor had made it clear that she was going to double down on supporting Wilkerson. So in that moment, we all thought to ourselves, that's a good look, because, with a hearing, that means that she'll get a chance to be heard and people can be able to hear her and things can be able to work out. So that was what everyone was at. The problem is that Monday, right, when y'all listen to my podcast episode, when y'all was driving to work and doing your thing, city council decides at the 11th hour, not the 11th o'clock, the 11th hour, that they were going to withdraw Wilkerson's nomination. So there was going to be no hearing on Monday. They just was going to withdraw her nomination altogether. Well, this was a big move by Council President Kenyatta Johnson, who had this boss move. And when that decision was made, city council members, some of them including some people that allegedly from Isaiah Thomas's camp, they come out, they talking to the media, they flexing, they feeling themselves because they thought they were standing 10 toes down on business. Well, right when you thought it was over, there's a suspense. Wilkerson reads a letter that's on the masthead of the city of Philadelphia under Mayor Sherelle Parker's masthead, which basically tells her to continue to serve in this vacant seat, until she appoints someone else. Well, the reason why this is a big deal is because Sherelle Parker, the mayor, wanted Joyce Wilkerson to be literally, okay, she wanted Wilkerson to stay. Okay, she wanted her to stay in that position, and she's basically not going to find another successor because she doesn't need to. And so here is what I will say. The Philadelphia Inquirer did an editorial. I often don't agree with them, still don't fuck with them, but their editorial they did this past Sunday saying that Mayor Parker was right in her squabble with city council over school board nominees was what I agree with. This was a fight where Joyce Wilkerson was at the center of this fight between the Parker and city council. And at the end of the day, Sherelle won. Because Sherelle basically what she did is that she used her mayoral authority to basically tell Wilkerson to stay working until she finds someone. She's not going to find anyone, y'all. The gag is that this person in this seat can serve at the pleasure of the mayor, because it is a mayor's appointee. And even though this person was not voted in by council, because there's a vacancy in the seat and she was already occupying it, she can just pretty much stay there until the mayor finds someone else. Well, Parker is not going to find anyone else, pretty much. So Wilkerson will remain on that school board, and she basically trumped city council. And city council had a message and learning: do not fuck with this mayor. This is not the one in this case. This was not the fight. They didn't have anybody on their side. It was a hot mess. And honestly, I was very critical with city council about this. Wilkerson deserved better, which is what I argue. She did a lot of work. And there was a lot of intellectual dishonesty that took place. And one of the things that was mentioned in the Inquirer editorial, but also just said in general, was that behind a lot of these conversations was the council president, Kenyatta Johnson's wife, who, Don Chavot, who is the spokesperson for the African American Charter School Coalition. And, since 2020, they've been around, but in 2020, they claimed that Black-led charters were subject to inequities and racism, but there was a commission and a report done by the school board that found no intentional acts of racial bias and discrimination. They kept, doing this. And what's interesting, though, is that one of the Black-led charters that closed was operated by Universal Companies, which was run by Kenny Gamble, the music producer. Well, you all know that Johnson and Chavot were charged in 2020 for taking bribes from two Universal executives. But they were acquitted in 2022. And of course, Gamble was not accused of wrongdoing, to be clear. But even how messy was that Chavot was reportedly involved in the efforts to take down Wilkerson. Claiming, though, however, this is what Don Chavot claimed, was that the coalition did not take a position on the school board nominations and not use her position as council president's wife to block Wilkerson. But as it's been reported, either way, Don Chavot's role raises concerns about perceived real conflicts of interest when it comes to Johnson's handling of school district matters. Like, come the fuck on. Like, let's be real. It's just, let's be real. Like, I'm sorry. It's just too much going on here, right? And I want to be very clear that council sucked in this situation because they never really gave real reasons as to why they didn't want Wilkerson. It was nothing strong. Like, I heard stupid things, like petty things, like, oh, we were on a call one time and she fell asleep at a meeting or something. Well, sometimes people fall asleep. Okay, right? I mean, I've seen members of city council kind of snore off and doze off or be in their cell phones or look at things they shouldn't be looking at on their phone while city council sessions are happening. But what do I know? I just be at city council live every Thursday from 10 a.m. to 1 p.m. What do I know? But somebody said that one time there was a meeting where she slept. But I heard some interesting things that might actually be spiking up this conversation. Because why not? This is why you listen to Ernestly speaking. So sources have told me that some of the reasons why Wilkerson was not liked was that there was ego. I've heard from city council people that, Isaiah Thomas, who was the majority whip, who was really behind taking Wilkerson out or tried to take Wilkerson out, did not like the fact that Wilkerson did not give him this level of respect that his ego wanted, and that he felt oftentimes that she was quote unquote disrespectful. But I also heard something even more interesting was that there was a moment in time where allegedly Isaiah Thomas wanted to have Don Chavot in a conversation with, and again, this is allegedly, with Wilkerson, and Wilkerson had one time which said something along the lines of, I don't have conversations with criminals, making a reference to Don Chavot, to which that has left a stain in some of the perceived relationship issues between Don Chavot and Wilkerson and the whole African American Charters Coalition group. Apparently, and barely Joyce Wilkerson is a feisty one. I don't listen. It ain't nothing wrong with it. I mean, we gotta give credit where credit's due with Wilkerson. She's been a long time public servant. She graduated from Penn. She's got a law degree. She worked at community legal service. She's worked at the street administration. She worked for Council President John Street, and then she was his chief of staff when he was the mayor in 1999. Listen, Kenny in 2016 had appointed her to the School Reform Commission when it was state controlled, right? Before we had the school board as we have now. She helped the school district through funding challenges during the pandemic. She's had some challenges, right, under her leadership. But at the end of the day, you can't blame her for all this. I mean, to be real, serving on the school board is unpaid and it's a part-time position. And the fact that she was willing to do what she needed to do was a big deal. And we never, let me just say on the record, heard council make it explicitly clear why they opposed Wilkerson. And I believe if they did, we would have known and would have suspicioned further that a lot of what drove their decisions were Don Chavot consulting talking points, allegedly. So, food for thought. So moving along, in the media world, we're seeing a lot of continued media cuts. The Griot, which is a place that I contribute to every so often, has made some major cuts with some of their TV podcast programming. Some of the biggest cuts that are being talked about right now is that, Mark Lamont Hill, who always has to do a TV job, I feel for that brother. He can't keep a TV job. And it's not his fault. It's just the turning of the media. His show that he was doing on the Griot TV that was running for a while now. He had a nice little run on there. It got canceled recently in this cut. And Ebony K. Williams, who had her show on the Griot, also got cut. Now, these were two hot shows that appeared because oftentimes their segments was getting a lot of play on social media and going viral. So you would think that, Ebony K. Williams, who just both her and Mark Lamont Hill, who both received NAACP nominations recently for their programs on the Griot, you would think that that the shows were doing good, that the Griot was expanding because they've been expanding their platforms. But, of course, you don't know until you know. When you look at Byron Allen, who's this billionaire, this successful Black media entrepreneur, he wants to reprogram, reshift, and restructure. And so he's made some tough cuts. And it shocked people that layoffs are coming over at the Griot. Because a lot of people didn't see that happening. But he made some major axes to some programs. And people are talking about it. I thought it was quite telling, too. When the news came out, but I will say it was quite the conversation. Mm, mm, mm. So, when people ask me why do I do TV the way I do, right? When a lot of people ask me, why do I not do TV? It's not that I'm afraid to do TV. It's just that I'm just always thinking about some of the changes that are happening, the consistent changes, and that's one of them, right? So apparently, this is what I'm reading from this report. The Griot, they said the axe is falling. They said the situation said members of the podcast VO team have been laid off, along with the managing editor that they had over there who has been laid off. Allen Media Group, which is Byron Allen, the quote said that the company's brands continue to perform well, and in many areas, our revenue growth has greatly outpaced the market. We're aligning these changes to drive future business opportunities and support our growth strategies and our rapidly evolving industry. So I can see it. I can see some of his strategy. Like he's pivoting when he needs to pivot. It is a little cutthroat at a certain point in time, but he's recognizing what's what he needs to do to make win. I don't know if it's necessarily a money move, but it's just a strategy move. Like, listen, we need to move the culture forward in a different way. And it can be tough. It could be tough, but he's keeping his writers. I haven't been given a pink slip or anything like that. I'm around. But it is interesting to see how, again, the media world turns. So I want to talk about this Drake beef with Kendrick Lamar. And initially this would have went into my music segment of my podcast, but I do feel like this is become such a cultural event that it's beyond music. It speaks to something else, and I wanted to take some time to actually talk about that. So for those keeping up, any given Sunday or moment, Drake and Kendrick has been beefing. It's been a war. We need to call for a ceasefire immediately between these two rappers before they both ruin their own careers, to be real with you. But it's been a lot to see some of the things that's been happening with, protests and things of that nature. I've been following a lot of this stuff, and it's been a lot. So, for those who have not been following this rap beef, it is a little bit complicated. This has been a year of beef, as I've been saying before, but I'll go down the line and I'll try to give you the bridge version. Long story short, everybody hates Drake right now. A lot of rappers, Drake has done some snaky things to some people allegedly, and a lot of rappers from Rick Ross to Future to The Weeknd to Metro Boomin to, of course, Kendrick Lamar. You got DJ Mustard who's feeling some type of way. You got other producers who's feeling some type of way with him. But they just do not like Drake. A lot of them are just, there's been some things as clearly as happened. And when we found out Future and Drake had beef, I was shocked because they were the toxic duo. And now they're numero uno. It's only one of them now. But whatever Drake has done to these men has made them all feel some type of way, and they've been releasing collaborative diss tracks, and these diss tracks have been topping the charts, and it's created some feud. As a result, Kendrick has released multiple diss records, many of which have accused Drake of being a pedophile. He's accused Drake of liking underage girls and being creepy, quote unquote. He's accused Drake of not liking black women, hating black women, being a misogynist. A lot of very alarming allegations. Drake has clapped back with Family Matters, which is his diss track, which had, let me be clear, multiple authors co-writing the songs. Kendrick so far has been writing all of his singles solo, just putting that for context. J. Cole was in the middle of this drama, apparently. Even J. Cole had some smoke. But J. Cole didn't have the smoke for Drake. J. Cole had the smoke for Kendrick. And Kendrick and him had a beef. But then that got quickly, put to side because J. Cole took himself out of it quickly. And people were trying to figure out why. And I think we all know why now. Yeah. So there's been some feuds, to say the very least. And so with the situation now with Drake and Kendrick's winning. If we want to just talk about Kendrick winning, but Drake released a diss track that did not do as well, but he accused Kendrick of other atrocities. He said he makes music for the slaves, which is very problematic given the fact that Drake is being considered a colonizer, not a collaborator. There's questions about Drake's contributions to how he respects the culture, how black he really is. There's a lot of interesting conversation around race, gender, sexuality. It's a lot going on here. But interesting enough, Drake has alleged that Kendrick was abusive to women physically, to women that he has been intimate with, and there's been some people who've spoken and have tried to either substantiate or amplify those accusations. It's gotten ugly, and to be honest with you, at this point, I'm a little bit over this. Like, it's just got into a mudslinging that is really like, okay, at a certain point, this has gotten less fun, it's gotten personal, and I kind of want them to just kind of like, I'm like, if any of this is true, if we're supposed to believe any of this is true, which I hope it is, because if they're spilling the tea on each other, then I hope it is real tea. But then I'm like, if it is true, then I'm also a little like, wait a minute, both of you guys are hot dumpster fire. Sure, one person might be more dumpster fire than the other, but you know, it's a lot. But it's just frustrating because it's like, you guys are both trash. If the allegations are true about both of these dudes, you're both trash. What I will say though is that these Kendrick allegations and revelations that we're hearing from Drake, I had never heard it anywhere else. But Drake stuff, we've heard things about Drake. But it's a lot to say the least. But this is annoying because like we know this about, we've heard things about Drake texting underage girls, the him on stage with a 17-year-old girl that she but it's just like, come on. It's frustrating. It's very frustrating. And I want to take a moment because I really heard this and I read this from an author named David Dennis, who's a good friend of mine. He's a great writer. And he talks a lot about hip hop and music for Anscape, which used to be a publication called The Defender, I believe it was, or something like that. The Undefeated was the publication, but now it's Anscape is what it's called now. And he writes about hip hop and culture, like all these things combined. He talks about them. So he talked about this rap beef, and initially he's a hip hop head. He was his adrenaline was racing when he saw these beefs, everything like that. But now it's a lot going on that has really shaped his perspective. So I'm gonna read what he said in his article, this section specifically, and I really rock with what he said, and it really was a moment. So I'm gonna read specifically the quote. I'm quoting from his article that he wrote for Anscape. Quote: "The adrenaline from Friday, rap's biggest luminaries trading disc records in real time, was exhilarating. It was one of the most exciting nights in rap. But we'll be left with some tough realities when that rush wears off. The allegations the two men levied at each other, domestic violence, sex trafficking, general mistreatment of women, are severe. And it's even more troubling to address when each men's feigned concern for women falls apart under interrogation. Drake raps like he's appalled by Kendrick allegedly beating women. In the same song, he shouts out Chris Brown, and after years of defending Tory Lanez, who shot Megan Thee Stallion. Kendrick Lamar can talk about his concern for women, but that falls flat when he used his last album as a way to platform Kodak Black, who has been accused of raping a high school girl before pleading guilty to a lesser charge of first-degree assault and battery in 2021. Neither man has any moral high ground when it comes to this issue. They just sound like they're parroting out black women's trauma to one-up each other in a hyper-masculine rap feud. And it will only serve to have rabid fans digging up dirt on the women who get name-checked in each song while also looking up clues to identify an unnamed 11-year-old girl who may or may not exist. This is how rap feuds go, of course, with women as props for male rappers to insult one another. And it's a trope that's as tiresome as it is unnecessary, childish and harmful for no reason. Tupac did it to Faith Evans when he dissed Biggie. Jay-Z did it to Carmen Bryan when he went at Nas. And Pusha T did it to Sophie Broxix, or Bro, when he dissed Drake. Rappers sling mud, reveal dark secrets, and go for the proverbial death blow, with women being both the nuclear bomb and the collateral damage. I mean, that's my thoughts exactly. David Dennis nails it. And that's how I, feel about this. Like, that's how I, can come to terms with how I feel about this current situation. At this point, yes, Kendrick has won the war, but who, but who, well, maybe he's won the battle, but who's winning the war? And that's what I think about in this situation, There's been a lot of people that went in about the situation with, the conversations that's being had about Drake's longevity. Damon Young, who's another great Black writer, talked about the conversations that are being had about, well, at the end of the day, Drake's a superstar. He's gonna be fine. Ain't nobody gonna touch Drake. He's the GOAT. He's the this. He's the that. And there's another perspective that is also interesting, right? So this is what Damon Young said on social media. He said, when thinking about Drake today, I keep coming back to Justin Timberlake, which means I keep coming back to two numbers, 2006 and 67,000. 2006 is when Future Sex Love Sounds dropped, and also when, quote, Dick in a Box essentially invented YouTube. There was no bigger star in American music, and maybe in American music is an unnecessary qualifier. He seemed to be redefining who and what a megastar could be, and that's self-aware without self-consciousness, which is a way of saying he had unusually great taste and had a general neurologicalness that felt specifically engineered for longevity. He also possessed the amalgamation of whiteness, of maleness, of white maleness, of likability, of sex appeal, of humor, of allies, of talent, and of power that made him impervious to the consequence of scandal. He was a cagey, crafty, slippery motherfucker. 67,000 is the first week sale estimate of his latest release. Everything I Thought It Was is the name of the album, y'all. Did you know he dropped an album 7 years ago? Did you even know, quote, Everything I Thought It Was is the actual name of the album and not just my half-sentence commentary on how I expected it to do? Did you even know it was preceded by 3 singles? Did you know it featured guest spots from Beyonce, Travis Scott, and James Blake? Did you even know I made that last sentence up? Yeah, that's not true. Travis Scott, Beyonce, and James Blake was not on the album, but he's being funny here, right? A reoccurring resignation in each of the several group chats I'm in discussing the events of the weekend is that regardless of what happens next, Drake has reached a stratosphere of fame and ubiquity where he is too big to fall off, a sentiment I've seen repeated on social media and in conversation, and one that is false as fuck. Maybe this ain't what does it. Maybe it never happens, and rap continues to be ruled by the sentient peace bridge. But nothing is immune to the creep, and then the crash. Nothing is too big or too important or too culturally and spiritually unattractable. It happened to Tiger Woods. It happened to professional boxing. Quick, name the current heavyweight champion of the world. Yeah, I don't know who that is. It can happen to the NFL. It can happen to Apple. It might certainly be happening to America. Oof. It can happen. It can happen. At one point in time, we never thought Michael Jackson can fall from the sky, but he did. We never thought that when Britney Spears was on top of the earth, I never felt like she could ever fall, right? I remember when, Jennifer Lawrence was like the hottest actress in Hollywood, and everybody thought Jennifer Lawrence was like going to be the it girl as long as Julia Roberts, and she did not. we're in a world where anything can happen at any moment. And longevity is not guaranteed. Not everybody can be Beyonce. Not everybody can be Oprah. And those are black women. I think about certain artists that were just on fire at a certain point in time, and then they got corny or got irrelevant. Justin Timberlake is a textbook example of that, right? Justin Timberlake had this career that, to Damon Young's point, felt like it was going to be forever, in the conversation. And now, that's not the case. It's not the case. And so we see so many of these conversations and these debates, and it just makes you wonder, how does one, progress their priorities? How does one, get with the times? And if the argument is that Drake has the most money, so therefore he's untouchable, that's a weak ass conversation. Because also there's a man named MC Hammer who had unstoppable #1 hits and sold millions and millions of records that did. I mean, look at Whitney Houston. Whitney Houston, at a certain point in time, felt untouchable. Like, Whitney could do no wrong in some people's eyes. But then we look at Whitney Houston and we look at what happened to her tragically, and we're reminded that a lot of stars can fall from grace based on certain circumstances. And quite frankly, knowing how Drake is as an artist, I can see Drake being one of those people. I can even see this case for Taylor Swift. I think about Gaga. I remember when Gaga at one point in time felt like she couldn't be touched. And we saw what happened to Gaga, But, Gaga had to come back again and reinvent herself. So it's not to say that Gaga wasn't legendary and great. It's just that Gaga had to reinvent herself. So reinventions are real. Artists are real. You can't, I'm not saying that people can't change, but I do think that there might be something that's going to happen here. So I don't know. Will this end Drake? I don't know. But I do think that there's been a lot said. And if the conversations around Drake and pedophilia and underage girls, all this stuff continues to come, it's going to be hard for people to keep ducking and dodging certain allegations or narratives, especially at this point in the game. So I'm staying woke. But I'm really over this beef. I just at this point, it's like, how many diss tracks you need to drop? In some sense, I don't necessarily, Kendrick, I'm a little disappointed to some degree, because I'm like, Kendrick can act like he's a saint all day, but it's like, if you knew all this about Drake and all this, how come this was the moment when everybody wanted to now pull out the darts? That's my thing. Like, all of a sudden now everybody want to be this virtue of speaking, when, a lot of these men, like, I just think it's funny that people talking about deadbeat dads, but y'all did a song with Future. Now, I do like me some Future, but like, come on, let's be serious. You did a diss track about deadbeat dads with Future? Okay. It's just a lot of hypocrisy for me. I mean, Rick Ross over here talking, but it's like, you talked about slipping a Molly in somebody's drink and you didn't know it. That came out like 10 years ago, but I still didn't forget he said that cringy ass lyric. I mean, it was like literally date raping, but I digress. Just saying. It is a complex, nuanced conversation, but I just want to provide that perspective, because I don't think everyone's like, who won, who this, who that. I feel like to just talk about that way is to miss the larger point. So that's where I stand on it. So moving along, this week's Ask Ernest is from an interesting fellow who reached out to me with a really cool question about ghosting. So let's begin. This is okay. What's goody, EO? Hope you are enjoying your Cinco de Mayo weekend. It's a little rainy, so be safe. Well, I am safe and I am dry. But I wanted to hit you up about a question I had. Since you're asking all the hot questions and not judging, of course, this is a judge-free zone sometimes. So my question for you is about this past relationship I dealt with. I dated this chick, well, we say lady, but we'll say chick. I dated this chick for 6 months. Everything was going good. She definitely seemed like someone I wanted to bring home to my mama, if you get what I'm saying. LOL. I get it. Okay. They hooked up multiple times. I guess he wanted us to know that detail. We hooked up multiple times. Everything was great. No problems. Everything was solid. With the 100 emoji for those who clearly can't see this detail. However, after Easter, I didn't hear from her. No text messages. I tried to drive past her crib. Not trying to be a stalker or anything, in parentheses. But definitely thought it was odd that I stopped hearing from her. She blocked me on Twitter. She blocked me on Facebook. She blocked me on Instagram. And it was weird because even when I started texting her, I sensed that I was also blocked from her phone. Please note, all caps. We did not get in an argument. We never got into any type of confrontations. We never really had any disagreements. And I actually thought that maybe a year from now, we might be even engaged. Aww. That's heavy. Okay. Scrolling. Let me scroll. Now, I feel like she's ghosting me. And I got the final confirmation 2 days ago. I was out with my boys at a bar that we go to all the time, a place that she definitely knows I go to. And I saw her with another dude in the back of the bar, and I was shocked. It seemed like she's known him for a minute, even though I'd never seen him before. He had his arm around her, they was kissing, and it was clear this was not a first date. My friend went up to her, I didn't, and she blew him off. Now I feel like I've been played and I want to expose her. What should I do when chicks, and I mean chicks, decide to ghost? Well, for starters, I would just say that I don't know. Have I ever experienced ghosting? Yeah, I have experienced ghosting, actually. This was a time, clearly over a decade ago, that I had met this dude at H&M. He worked at H&M. Look at me checking all the stereotype boxes. I met him at H&M. He gave me his number. We went on a cute little date somewhere. I think it was a couple Banana because I was nearby Penn's campus. And it was a cute date. He hung out with me that night. Clearly it was a good date. And then we text the next day. We was making plans to see each other for another date. And then I didn't hear from him. I just felt like my numbers was not ringing on anything. And I found out on Instagram that he had a whole boyfriend or he had got with some boy or something. But all of this was happening at the same time we was talking. So it just seemed a little weird. I ended up bumping into him months later at a club, and he tried to act like everything was like, oh, hey, what's up? And tried to play it off like everything was just normal. And I was like, the fuck? But mind you, wasn't trying to talk to me in the same way that he talked to me before, but just gave me a hug and was like, oh, how was it going? And I just was kind of like, well, you just kind of left me, and he just was like, oh, life was happening. But it was just bullshit because I knew he was in a relationship with somebody. But you know what I did? I just was like, that's somebody else's problem. And I just moved on. I literally moved on. And I know this might suck because it is 6 months is a long time. And that does hurt, right? And that person is terrible for what they did, okay? So I'm not even defending their behavior. But I would just say, what would be the goal to do in this situation? This is a hypothetical, but I'm just saying, you should not want them. At this point, they did this to you. It's obvious this was deliberate. It's obvious that was fucked up. So I want to say several things to you. The first thing I want to say is that, one, you don't need to get them back. You shouldn't even want them back. I know that's hard to hear, but you don't want them back. just don't get with them back. Don't even pursue. Don't even want them back. You got to move on. You got to get over them. That's the first thing. You got to move on. You got to get over them. That's the first thing. Don't even consider the thought of getting back with them, because obviously they're on some other bullshit, some other type time, and that's just going to be a problem for you. That's just waiting to happen. So let's just get that out there. Second thing is that whoever they're with, that's their problem, right? That's not your concern. That's not your problem. That person will find out or not, but there's no need for you to get in any business related to them moving forward. Like, that's not your business. Stay out of that. I'm trying to keep people safe. I hear stories all the time about people trying to intervene in some stuff, and let that be, okay? The third thing is be grateful that you dodged a bullet. Sometimes in your life, things happen a certain way, and you're shocked, and you want no answers, and you want to know this, you want to know that. Listen, when a person shows you who they are, believe them. For whatever reason, this woman has decided to leave and go somewhere and do some other things. Don't question it. Don't overthink it. Don't even do any of that. Just take it for what it is and dodge the situation. And then lastly, do not fault yourself for this. This is not your fault. If you're telling me everything to be true, I don't think it's your fault. There's no need to get closure. There's no need to get explanation. There's no need to get a conversation. Sometimes it's okay to just say, you know what? Whatever the fuck is going on, I ain't worried about it. But whatever you should do is don't spend your time wondering, what did you do wrong? Sometimes there are people in the world that do things that are just, quite frankly, just mean. Some people just do bad things without no accountability, without no honesty, and just do stuff that just cause problems and make things worse. Some people don't have the integrity or the courage to be honest about how they fucked up or they did something they should have been doing. Some people don't want to be real. And so in situations like that, you don't have, don't fault yourself, because if you didn't do anything wrong, then why question yourself? Why question who you are? You know where your heart was and what your intentions were. So there's no need for you to have to be second guessing who you are as a person and moving differently. And then my last piece of advice before moving on would just be, when you get into your next situation, maybe be more observational about this person. I don't know. You didn't really give me enough details about the person you was dating and their background, but signs of ghosters, and this is what I learned from having a ghoster, is that a lot of times people who ghost typically operate in a sense of isolation. And what I mean by isolation is they typically do these things. They're very separate. So a ghoster, most ghosters, I would say, now not all ghosters, but a lot of ghosters that I know, a lot of them will get involved in relationships and situations that are toxic or problematic or whatever, but they will do things that, quite frankly, oftentimes will counter that move of others. It won't include other people, meaning that the ghoster, you're never going to know who their friend circle is. You're never going to know their family. You're never going to know any other people in their orbit as much. That's just what I will say. Like, when I was dealing with this dude many years ago, and he was a quote unquote ghoster, right? When I was dealing with him, I never really knew anything about his friends, his social life, or his circle. I mean, I knew a little bit about his hobbies and things, but I didn't know any of his friends. I couldn't tell you about his family. I couldn't tell you anything about him. And I feel like people that are ghosters that intend to do things, they don't want to get you attached to other people. They want you attached on them, but they don't want you connected to other folks, because that will be a level of accountability that they don't want to have to deal with. See, when you get involved with a person and you bring them to your friends and your family and other people, it's a lot harder to really then try to dismiss the person as quickly. I'm not saying people don't have agency to leave or break up, but it is a little harder to ghost the person when you got a connection with them, right? So when I think about some of my friends who are in relationships or whatever like that, and I know who they're dating, right? I know their friends know me. I know, if they come up missing or something, they can call me. I could say, oh, he over here, what's going on? But there's a collective, collaborative effort. Like, no one is like in the dark. And so if you're in a situation where you were with somebody for like, oh, you said 6 months, I'm curious. I don't know, but I'm curious if other people was in that conversation or that you was integrated within a relationship, because a lot of times what I've noticed out here, for whether it's dealing with guys or girls, I have had friends and people tell me stories, and I'm just like, okay, well, who are the advocates? Who's rooting for you? Who wants your relationship to succeed and win? And a lot of them are like, well, I haven't met the friends. Yeah, I met one person. It's like, I feel like at a certain period of time, if this is a serious relationship, you should be being brought into the fold. Like, this shouldn't feel like it's an isolated situation where like nobody can talk about it, nobody knows what's going on, nobody can defend or check in or anything like that. I don't like that. Whenever the relationship I'm in currently, my marriage, my friends, well, clearly my friends know my husband, but even before my husband was my husband, he was my fiance, he was my long-term, lover. My friends knew who he was, and I knew who his friends were. Like, we all were all aware of each other, so there was no confusion or anything like that. I think in a lot of situations with ghosters, they don't want you to be all in the mix because they can't ghost you that way. So, just some food for thoughts. As far as movies go, there's only one movie I saw this weekend I got a chance to get a sneak peek of, and it's really good. It's called The Fall Guy, and it is starring Ryan Gosling and Emily Blunt. Very, very good movie. I don't typically watch movies like this, but I really liked it. It was really like grown and mature and sexy. And Ryan Gosling, I mean, listen, I know people have been saying Ryan Gosling's is a great actor, really fun. He's done some good things, but I've really been liking the new Ryan Gosling, like Ryan Gosling, ultimate movie superstar. Like, and I know people will say, oh, he's been a star, but like, he is on some other level right now. Like, he is Tom Cruise right now. Like, when Tom Cruise was on the top, like, I just feel like he's like the it guy now, like the total it guy. He's been in movies for a long time, but something about him in The Fall Guy was just like, ooh. And I mean, of course, he was phenomenal in Barbie. I mean, he got his second acting nomination, an Oscar nomination for his performance in Barbie. His first one was in Half Nelson, which came out like over 10 years ago. It's interesting how he's been able to maintain a career. He's 43 years old. And when he was in Half Nelson, which is an iconic movie, that movie came out in 2006. And so that was like, he was like 20, I want to say how many years ago that was. He was like 20, 25 years old when he 26 years old when he got that Oscar nomination, 26, 27 years old when he got an Oscar nomination for that film. And he was nominated for Best Actor in that film for an Academy Award. And he was really good in it. And it was like a very indie film. It came out 2006. So he's been in the game for a minute, yo. He's been in the game for a minute. That movie came out 18 years ago. And he was about 26 years old or, whatever, 27 when he was nominated for an Academy Award for Best Lead Actor. And so for him to now, 18 years later, get an Oscar nomination for Best Supporting Actor for Barbie, he's come a long way. He's come a long way from, that film and where he is now. But it was his career has always been a build-up. And he was a Disney child actor and whatnot. And then Emily Blunt is just delicious. She finally got her first actress Oscar nomination, which she was long overdue. I mean, again, 2006, she was in a film called Devil Wears Prada. I would have liked her to be a Best Supporting Actress nominee for her role in The Devil Wears Prada. But, she did not get nominated. She was nominated for a Golden Globe, but she didn't get nominated for an Oscar until this year for her supporting actress performance in Oppenheimer, which was really divine. But yeah, it's interesting to see, those two doing a film together, this collaboration, this energy, especially after all the Oppenheimer, Barbie shade, for them to now be together in a film. And they were a great duo. Really love the film. Now, as far as music goes, because there are other things happening outside of, outside of all the talk around, who win the Kendrick Lamar beef, it's some other stuff going. But I want to talk about this real quick because a lot of people were talking about the inductees for the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame, and a lot of people were talking about the inductees, and there's a lot of discourse. I was kind of surprised by some of them, so I'll name them. Some of them are great. Dave Matthews Band. I know my good friend Kelly is somewhere hype as hell that Dave Matthews Band got in it. Kelly Mirabot is a big fan of Dave Matthews Band. So for them to be in the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame, she is hype. Cher, long overdue. Mary J. Blige, that was a shocker. Foreigner is on there. Peter Frampton, Kool and the Gang, Ozzy Osbourne, and A Tribe Called Quest. Those are this year's performer inductees. Other inductees are Dionne Warwick, Norman Whitfield, MC5, Jimmy Buffett, Alex Corner, John Mayall, and Big Mama Thornton. And then Suzanne D. Passe, who's this big music exec and a legend. She's also getting an award and being honored as well. But it's just interesting about the Hall of Fame. So people who were nominated this year that did not get it, Mariah Carey was a shocker. I think people really wanted Mariah Carey. That was a person that people wanted. I know. Sade, Smooth Operator, Sinead O'Connor, who was a legend. I just thought was going to be definitely an easy pick. Yeah, there were some people that I just thought were going to definitely get on the list, but they're going to have to wait. They can keep going. I remember Janet didn't get the first try, but Mary J. Blige jumped right in there. That was a shocker. Cher, I'm happy for Cher. Dave Matthews Band, Kool and the Gang, A Tribe Called Quest did it, and Ozzy Osbourne did it, which was a shocker. But there was a lot of people up. Lenny Kravitz. Oh my goodness, how can I forget Lenny Kravitz? Lenny Kravitz did not get it. And I was shocked about that. Because with all of his recent media appearances, I thought the campaign was going to go. But no Lenny Kravitz this time around. So I hope that next year, some of these people, reapply or go for it again. I'm shocked that Mary J. Blige is getting in before Mariah Carey. That is a big deal. It was a lot of, I remember when Missy Elliott got it, and I was so happy about that when Missy made it on the list. A lot of people was thrilled. So it was a lot of chatter that made it. So some of the people who were nominees, I remember it like it was yesterday. I think people were trying to, some of the people who I remember, people talking about the inductees, but I'm like, where is the list? So some of the big, I'm happy for Dionne Warwick. That's long overdue. But again, some of the big people was Sinead O'Connor, Lenny Kravitz, and Mariah Carey. Those are some of the bigger nominee names, of course, that I'm thinking about. Eric B. and Rakim. People thought that was going to happen. People thought Mariah Carey was an easy big. Eric B. and Rakim was people thought. Oasis, Jane's Addiction. Those was 15. They picked 8 out of the 15. So here were the people that was in total nominated. Mariah Carey, who did not get it, which is ridiculous. Cher, who got it. Ozzy Osbourne, who got it. Mary J. Blige, who got it. Eric B. and Rakim didn't, which is a shocker. Eric Frampton got it. Kool and the Gang got it. Sade didn't. Jane's Addiction didn't. Oasis didn't. Sinead O'Connor did. No, she didn't either. I'm sorry. The late Sinead O'Connor didn't. A Tribe Called Quest did. Lenny Kravitz didn't. Dave Matthews Band did. And Foreigner did. So it's 15 nominees, and 8 of the 15 did. I just don't understand how Mariah Carey and Lenny Kravitz did not get in there. Like, who would I replace? I'm going to be a little frank. I would have probably replaced Mary J. Blige with Mariah Carey. I would have made Mary J. Blige wait another year. I would have replaced Peter Frampton with Lenny Kravitz. And I would have placed Foreigner with Sade. Maybe, yeah, Sade. I would have replaced. Um, that would have been so. My iconic list of 8 would have been Mariah Carey, Cher, Ozzy Osbourne, um, Kool and the Gang, A Tribe Called Quest, Lenny Kravitz, and Dave Matthews Band. That would have been, did I say 8? And I would have probably kept Kool and the Gang, I think. That would have been my 8 I would have probably had. That's who I would have kept. I don't know. But that's what I would have. I just feel like some of them, So moving along, I listened to Dua Lipa's new album, which I thought was good. I thought it was a great album. It's called Radical Optimism. It's a great album. I feel like everything on that album was 11. It's 11 tracks. It's like 36 minutes long. It goes by really fast and fun. And it's a fast-paced song. Some of my favorite songs off the album, Houdini, End of an Era, French Exit, Illusion. Oh, such bangers. Such bangers. Illusion, Illusion was so good. French Exit, it's just such a good song. End of an Era is a great opener to an album. And Houdini is just, I don't know why Houdini was not a bigger hit than it was. A lot of people are critiquing the album. One of the biggest things I heard about the criticism of the album is that there's people who really like the album, appreciate it, and there's people who are like, eh. And people are like, well, what's the buzz about it? This is what I think. Well, first of all, the biggest critique about the album that people say is that they think the album is a pop album that's so innocuous and it's not as personal. And I think that's because we're in this era of Beyonce, Ariana Grande, and Taylor Swift right now, where a lot of their albums are connected to personal life experiences in a way that there's a narrative to them. And with this album, there's no strong narrative around Dua Lipa. The album is just some really great songs. And people are like, well, we want to know more about Dua Lipa. And we're in this parasocial relationship in music right now where fans and listeners feel like they need to know more about the person through their songs or through the music more directly. And, Taylor Swift just gave us a 32-song diary, a 2-hour-long diary of her life and her relationships, or what we think of them, right? With this album. And some people are down with that and some people aren't. In many ways, Cowboy Carter is a research paper and dissertation on the origins of Black country music and Black artistry and country music and all its origins and creativity, and Beyonce's personal narrative into tapping into that. And then Ariana Grande's, Eternal Sunshine is a reflection of her recent love life, from the divorce to the rumors of taking people's other man to all that, in an album that's also reflective about her own creative spiritual growth. So there's all these narratives. And Dua Lipa's album is an album that's full of good bops that are just good bangers and a good time. And it's fast, it's digestible as Swift. I like that in an album. And so it's a debate, right? Do you want an artist to be whatever? I just feel like Dua Lipa, what I appreciate about her is she's staying in her lane. She said it in interviews that she does not want to feel like, well, why do I gotta name names? Maybe the music is expressive of how I feel, but maybe I don't need to name names or use my album as a full catharsis, which was a shot at Taylor Swift, which is a warranted shot, and it could go for anybody. But I do appreciate the fact that she doesn't feel like she has to, participate in some of these types of, lyrical games and things. And quite frankly, there was a time where a lot of artists really didn't do that as much. There were some that did, but that wasn't the standard or normal expectation. It's just interesting that women in pop are expected to do so many different things. They're supposed to play their own instruments out loud. They're supposed to dance and be hot and be thin. They're supposed to also pour out their feelings and emotions without sounding like they hate men. It's like, which one is it? What do you all want from the pop girls? Maybe everybody has a different experience, want to be different. But I think we're in this era of music where some people want to be super nosy. And I do hope Dua Lipa's album does well because I do appreciate it. But what a time to release an album. She's dropping an album in the middle of all this musical clustering. In 2 weeks, Billie Eilish's new album is dropping. But just a couple of weeks before hers, 2 weeks ago, Taylor Swift dropped an album. And 2 weeks and 3 weeks before that, Beyonce dropped the album. And about a month before that, Ariana Grande dropped the album. And in between that was Casey Musgraves. It's like so many pop girls have taken over the goddamn spring. Spring belongs to the pop girls. What is happening in the summer? Are we getting a hot girl summer from Meg Thee Stallion? Is Rihanna finally coming out with a new album? We'll see. Is Cardi coming out or is she waiting till the fall? Like, we'll see. But this has been a year in music for women. The women have been dominating the charts and just really dominating the music outside the rap beef boys. So I'm here for it. As far as TV goes, I've really been not, a lot of my TVs are wrapping up. So I've watched some Abbott, but Abbott keeps taking these like weird like breaks in between for other things. And I have not been watching that much Zeus TV. I don't know if my Zeus binge is over or I'm just waiting for baddies, but I don't really like the shows that's out on Zeus right now. There's a show called, I don't know what the exact name is, but basically, if you've been following it, there's a show about Rolly, who was the plus size reality personality that is on Zeus, that she's on Baddies. But she went through, I believe, a lipo procedure. And so much of the conversation has been about her lipo transformation, this whole show. She has a whole new show talking about this process. And they're very graphic with the images of, things, tubes going into her. And it's very visual. It feels like a TLC type of show. And it's just too much for me to watch. Then there's this show called Baddies, verses and stuff. And I just feel like some of that is a little annoying and cringy. Some of it look like it's a little bit colorist and just so many different tropes. And it's hosted by Nick Cannon, which is just another blah for me. And so there's not been that other many shows. I'm waiting for Baddies, the new season of Baddies to come, because I hear people from Philly is going to be a part of it. So I'm kind of holding on for that. But that's that for that. I'm really feeling Martha's Vineyard, Summer House Martha's Vineyard. That show is gotten better. And as I'm currently planning my trip to Martha's Vineyard this upcoming summer. I'm going to be there from 7th to 11. August 7th to August 11th is when I'm going to be on the vineyard. I'm going to be in Oak Bluffs this time. I was in Eggerstown last time. This time I'm in Oak Bluffs. So it's going to be an interesting experience. Oak Bluffs is the more culturally Black area of Martha's Vineyard, especially in August. There's a lot of rich Black history. Eggerstown was fun. I have no complaints about Eggerstown. It was very luxurious and fun. But this summer I want to see like the different side of the island and see what this culturally Black area in the vineyard looks like and what it feels like. And there's going to be so many great activities that myself and Mr. Johnson are going to be partaking in. And our good old bestie, my homegirl Lauren, is also going to be at the vineyard around that time. So we're going to definitely link up and do some cool things. And it's going to be a little fun. It's going to be fun. We're going to be on yachts. We're going to be having fun. It's going to be a good old time in the vineyard. So we're looking forward to planning that. And I got a lot of things coming up in store for this week. And we're just going to see what more surprise that May has, because it's a new month. It's new surprises. And who sees what happens next. But as always, be well and be best.
Ernestly Speaking is recorded in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania, and can be found on Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts. To stay up to date with the latest on the show, follow me on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram at Mr. Ernest Owens. Use the hashtag Ernestly Speaking to tell me what you thought about this episode, and check out my website at ernestowens.com.